Richmond head basketball coach Chris Mooney once again comes over to the Marching to Madness college basketball podcast. He'll make backdoor cuts and shoot the three. Coach Mooney set 376 wins in 21 seasons on the bench after a successful playing career with the Princeton Tigers. He scored over 1,000 points, started all 4 seasons. Coach, you know a thing or two about that backdoor cut and a three-point shot from the legendary Pete Carril.
Yeah, I do. I was lucky enough to play for Coach Carril. He retired in 1996, and my last year was 1994. So all 4 seasons with Coach Carril, and a great staff. Bill Carmody, who went on to be the coach at Northwestern, and Joe Scott, the current coach of the Air Force Academy. Armand Hill, as an assistant at Indiana. So yeah, great coaching staff, and obviously a Hall of Fame coach.
Yes, he was a Hall of Fame coach and a man of innovation. So, how did he add to his offensive scheme given his vision of the talent and the matchups you would face?
Yeah, I would say Coach Carril was pretty far ahead of his time. I think a lot of what we see in basketball now with 5-out basketball, 3-point shots and shots at the rim, the pace, the skillfulness of everyone, the cutting, more than screening. I think when I played, there were more teams screened and there was less cutting. I think now that's really changed dramatically, and I think Coach Carril is way far ahead of his time. And I would say he just had an incredible feel for basketball. I think that his gift was keeping things as simple as possible, even though it seemed like it was an intricate way of playing. It was pretty simple, and but he was pretty relentless in making sure that all the decisions were made on time, and to make them as correctly as often as possible.
Obviously, you have 20 years now with the Spiders and in the Atlantic 10 Conference. So you've seen plenty of different philosophies and ideologies as it applies to the game inside that conference.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's part of the fun, or in my opinion, the most fun part about basketball is the different ways that teams play. That you might have a team that is very deliberate and runs half-court sets and has great offensive schemes, and you might play a team that has very little of that, but they have great pressure defense and play to the athleticism and speed and quickness. And some teams in between, some teams that shoot 3-point shots as often as they can, and some teams who shoot 3-point shots when they're available. So I think that's kind of the most fun part of the game to me as a coach. And certainly we've seen a lot of that because Atlantic 10 is so big and so deep.
Yeah, with the transfer portal now as it stands, how have you worked to transition with it to accentuate the building of the Spiders?
Yeah, that's a good question. The transfer portal presents a lot of opportunity. It also presents a lot of issues in terms of retaining your players or having players for multiple years that you can help to develop and improve. So I feel like what we've tried to do is try to get the best parts of it in terms of being able to add talented and experienced players to your roster. But we really want to mainly focus on retaining our guys. Like what is the best way we can keep our players at Richmond, improving, making sure they're exposed to as much as possible during the course of their time here. But certainly you have to go out there and look at guys who are transferring or in the portal to see if they can enhance your team and add quality depth to your team. So it's a little, we've been fortunate in that we haven't had to sign quite as many as some teams. A lot of teams that have new coaches have to sign almost a whole new roster.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't been quite under the gun like that, but we've had to go sign 3 and 4 players a year, and just trying to make those decisions as best as we can, as informed as we can.
It was really a tough offensive season for you last season or this past season. So, what are ways you work to rebuild it? And then, from a strategic standpoint, that'll involve the fundamentals and how you're going to attack.
Yeah, that's a great question. We really did struggle, especially after Delani Hunt, our starting point guard, was hurt. We really struggled offensively. It was hard for us to generate easy baskets. I think we were probably deliberate or very deliberate because of that. We just had a hard time converting baskets and really had a hard time getting easy baskets. So I think, there's a real emphasis for us this off season and how do we generate those easier baskets, having better pace on offense, trying to convert some turnovers, trying to get more second shots, but just somewhere where we can get 3, 4, 5 easier buckets per game, that helps your overall offense. And that was something we really lacked this year.
All right, Delani Hunt was your leading scorer until he fractured his foot after January began. So what was the prognosis now on his recovery?
Well, Delani is now fully recovered. Unfortunately, he's graduating, or fortunately, he's graduating. Unfortunately, he won't be back for the Spiders for another year.
Oh,
But yeah, he actually he worked so hard. He came back ahead of schedule and made an appearance in the conference tournament game, which was incredibly impressive and inspiring for us. But yeah, Delani, who's one of the great Spiders that I've been around, is going to pursue a pro career, and I hope he does that with great health and attacks it the same way he did when he was here.
Gail Tyne, how will he be more of a factor now on both ends of the floor?
Yeah, well, he is really a great defender and has been a great defender since he came here. He's extremely strong and quick. He's got a great sense of balance, tough, physically tough. And then offensively, he really improved as the season went on. I think for Kel, it's playing with just a little bit more pace and understanding of where there are openings. He's a forceful player and which shows up in a lot of positive ways, but just trying to be a little bit more savvy and trying to take his time on some opportunities, I think will really help him to enhance his game. But Mikel's been a pleasure to coach, and we're lucky to have him going into his third year, and we really see great things for him on the horizon.
As you turn into summer practice now, what are the key ways for players to develop their confidence, knowing that they can be in a competitive rotation for what will be this upcoming season?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. The summer is a little bit different now than it used to be in terms of, often, especially at Richmond, we were looking at having, 10, 11 guys back and adding some freshmen. Now you're adding a fair amount of new pieces. So we will add 3 freshmen, but also transfers. And so I think you have to probably start a little bit sooner in terms of implementing your offensive scheme, your defensive principles, situations. I think you really have to try to do that as much as you can in the summer. I think the summer we used to use for, teaching guys how to play, getting guys comfortable at Richmond, really guys working on their individual game. But now I think with all the turnover and change, you really need to start preparing for the season from the very first day you get back.
With so much turnover and change, was the NCAA able to put more hours on how much you can work in the spring and summer?
That hasn't come, although I would anticipate that will happen. I think that it's been 4 hours in the summer.
Yeah.
And I think that'll probably go up, after all the players are being compensated. And so I would think that, those rules should probably expand or just disappear. But so far that hasn't happened. That's kind of one of the things that we've seen is, some of the rules are a little bit dated because there's been so much change so rapidly in the last few years.
I don't liken the transfer portal to the NBA draft, for example, for the simple reason, to me, on the surface, it sounds like it's kind of alike, but it not really it is because of how you recruit at the college level versus draft picks.
Yeah. Yeah, that's certainly a big difference, being drafted rather than being, choosing your own place. And the other one is that in the NBA that there is no transfer portal. You have to abide by the contract that you signed. And right now we don't have that in college basketball. There's essentially they don't really sign contracts as much as they sign agreements to be paid.
Mhm.
Uh, Essentially can treat it like they're free agents every day. So we need to get a little bit of balance there. And I'm sure we will, but it has proven to take some time.
We go back to the Final Four, which was a month ago. So, what was your perception of how the SEC built like an unprecedented season, but then it was a springboard into the tournament with Florida winning a national championship?
Yeah, well, the SEC was just tremendous. I know it's been called maybe the best conference ever, and I'd probably have to agree with that. From what I've seen, the number of teams in the tournament, the number of teams highly ranked, certainly some really, really elite teams like Florida and Auburn and Tennessee. Really very impressive. And we were cheering for Florida. We had a former Spiders player, Kevin Hovde, on
Yeah,
Florida staff, a former Spiders coach, Carlin Hartman.
yeah.
We're really happy for Todd and all of the coaches and players. It was really impressive and just an amazing team and amazing accomplishment.
Kevin came on the show last week.
Oh, very nice. Very nice.
Hey, last thing, Coach. What are ways to build sustainability in really any basketball program with how, the recruiting has changed, like we say, given the transfer portal and the NIL?
Yeah, I think that's the real challenge for coaches who have been in this for a little bit of time. It has changed so drastically. I think one thing is trying to keep as many guys from one year to the next as you can, so that those habits and language and culture of the program can pass organically from the players to the new players. That's really important. I think you really need a good, energetic staff that can communicate well. I think that once you're here and once you're on campus, there has to be a certain way that everybody does things. And we need to understand that as quickly as we can so we can start to build. So if you could have a staff that has the energy to do that, which is now year round, and have, the recruiting communication to do that, even though you're trying to get the guy to come to your school, you're also laying the ground for what he can expect when he's here. So I think that's really important, the staff.
Coach Chris Mooney, one of the best. He knows that three ball, and like I say, he knows that backdoor cut. Coach, I got to pull you there. I got to put that in. I remember back in the day, it was over 100 career games.
Thank you.
Best of luck, and I enjoy chatting with you, and I wish you the best going forward here this summer.
Thank you very much. I appreciate being on.